it's time to get the onions planted out. Now, it's beautiful and sunny today, but it's quite windy. Guaranteed it's going to affect the sound, but a few things. Take out the old labels. This year, I've got a bit of a mix, so let me show you. These are my red baron onions, grown from seed. These are Cupido onions, so they're standard kind of like white onions, grown from sets. These were planted just at the beginning of March. These were planted early February. Quite a difference. But on one hand, this is a really good test, because the reason I grow my onions from seed is because I have had lots of problems with growing from sets. It keeps bolting. And when you've only got a little space to grow onions, you want to make sure you get as many of them as possible, so as few bolting, so that you get a decent harvest to make it worthwhile. However, a lot of my onions failed this year. In fact, I didn't get any germination of a particular variety of onions, so I was only left with my red barons. Hence, last minute I bought some of these sets. Now, these are different. These are heat-treated sets that you plant in spring, and supposedly it severely reduces the likelihood of them bolting. We're still waiting to see. The jury's out until harvest time, so we'll just have to wait and see. But another thing I'm going to be doing differently is I'm going to be planting a lot more into this space this year, because I don't want onions as big as previous years, because they were whoppers. But what that meant was, if you're cooking with them, you only ever used about a quarter of an onion. So you always had an onion that had been previously chopped in the fridge. Not ideal, because they pong and stink everything else out in the fridge, even when you've got them in a box. So yeah, so we're going to do that. Now, before I actually stick these in the ground, I'm going to put a wee bit of nutrition back in here, because I've been growing plenty in here. I've had lots of greens and things in here over winter. So I'm just going to add a little bit of fish blood and bone to all of it as I plant. And I've forgotten something important. I need to get my dibber. Back with my dibber that Kate made for me. Okay, now, I've already said I'm going to add in some nutrition to the soil. I have to be very aware of this rhubarb as well. So firstly, because obviously it's taken a lot of nutrition and water from this bed, so I need to really keep on top of things. But also, as you can see, it really encroaches this way. So what I do is I'll actually put a barrier in that will hold those leaves up out the way, because otherwise they just mug the onions. And last year they just stopped some of my little red barons from actually doing anything. Okay, so what I'm going to do then is I'm going to do the smaller onions at the front. And by smaller, I mean just smaller. And then I'm going to put these bigger ones at the back. And as I said, I'm going to go with close together, or closer. So let's see. Another thing. If you're using these slow release fertilisers, you need to make sure it gets worked into the soil. Because what will happen is, like anything else in the whole composting down process, it gets broken up in the soil by all the life that's in the soil. And that's what makes it available as nutrition to your plants. So don't just sprinkle on top. Right, here we go. So last year, I gave all my onions a good 6 to 8 inches space, and they ended up far too big. So this year I'm going to go with 4 inches. Dead easy. Now obviously I've got these in little modules, so I've got them as individual onions, but you could have sown these as little groups of onions and grown that way. They don't have to be all separate. This dibber's actually worked out perfect. It's the exact size of these. So you can see here, you don't need to be super delicate, even though they're little delicate seedlings. Oh, that one was a little group. Dead easy. And of course, it's exactly the same to plant out your sets. The only difference, as you can see, is the sets, when I planted them into the little module trees, are just above the soil. I'm going to keep that exactly the same, putting them into the ground. I'm keeping that little onion set just above the surface of the soil. And you'll notice as both your sets and your seeds grow on and your onions develop, that's what you're going to start to see, is the actual onion is going to be proud of the surface for quite a bit. I'm going with the same spacings and everything. It's super easy. So there we go. That easy. Now I'm going to give them a really good water. The thing with onions is they want a sunny spot. So this is probably the sunniest spot in the garden. They want a lot of water and a lot of nutrition. So keep on top of your watering. Try not to let things dry out. And late summer, we should be getting harvests. And then we'll be able to compare the onions grown from spring sets. How did they do? How was the bolting? It really doesn't get any easier, does it? See you next time, folks. See ya.